Baby, you are gonna go broke showing turkeys like these.
Now we're talking turkey.
Gobble, gobble, motherfucker.
It's turkey time. Gobble, gobble.
Welcome, everybody, to Let's Talk Turkeys, February edition. I'm taking over the introductions because my co-host, Movie Miss, is tongue-tied. I don't know if it's because she's so excited over the movie that we've got today, or if it's just because she's drunk. I mean, it could be either.
Yes, hello, sir. And I am very excited about this movie. This is our Patreon exclusive, sort of a rom-com. We'll get into it for Valentine's Day time here. It's Joe Versus the Volcano from 1990. And even though it's a turkey, I really wanted to have it on Patreon because it's one of those films where it's very polarizing. And I didn't know if just kind of throwing it in the main feed and going, hey, everybody, check this out. If some people might be like, ooh, I don't think I want to listen to that one. I didn't like that movie. So I figured I'd slide it into our Patreon here. That way it's a choice. If people subscribe and want to hear it, great.
This is, I want to point out, this is my first time ever seeing this movie. So when you said polarizing, like that light went over my head. I was like, yeah, this was very polarized. This felt like a movie you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it.
Once upon a time, in the middle of a deep, dark factory, an average Joe Banks lived a very boring life.
Good morning, Dee Dee.
Hi, Joe. What's with the shoe?
Losing my soul.
Yeah.
Until one day, he found out his life was over.
I'm not sick except for this terminal disease.
That's right. You have some time left, Mr. Banks. Live it well.
And that's
Joe Banks?
when his adventure began.
You and I might be able to help each other. I want to hire you to jump into a volcano. A total red carpet situation. It's wine, women, and song in the sweetest little paradise you ever saw. A real journey.
Are you Joe Banks?
Yeah.
Warner Brothers presents
Joe Banks.
the story of a man, a mountain, and a miracle.
Take me to the volcano!
He's diving! He's jumping! He's leaving!
Written and directed by John Patrick Shanley, the Academy Award-winning writer of Moonstruck.
I love you.
I love you, too. I've never been in love with anybody before either. It's great. I am glad. But the timing stinks. I gotta go.
So when I first saw this movie, when it first came out in the 90s in the theater, because I was all about Tom Hanks at the time, this was a vehicle for him to showcase. He was on that hot streak. This was the last movie on his tail end of comedies that he was churning out in the 80s. So he was churning out comedies back to back to back through the 80s. Splash, Bachelor Party, The Man with One Red Shoe, Volunteers, The Money Pit, Big, Dragnet, The Burbs, Turner and Hooch, and then he caps it with Joe Versus the Volcano. He was on a tear as comedy guy. So when this came out, I was like, hell yeah, I'm there. Tom Hanks vehicle, rom-com, especially because the commercials made it look like a rom-com. And they even say that, I think, in IMDb. I was here for it. Didn't like the movie the first time I saw it. But now over the years, rewatching it, and now especially analyzing it, and the themes in the movie and the dialogue written for the movie. And we'll get into it as we go through the plot walkthrough. This movie is low-key, pretty fucking great.
I did not come out a huge fan of it. I kind of did pick up like there was some subtle things in there that I'm going to have to rewatch this movie a few times to truly appreciate it. But I didn't hate it. But I was like, okay, this is one that's definitely going to have to be watched multiple times to let it kind of grow on me.
There's some really weird stuff with this movie. Like I keep saying, it's supposed to be a rom-com, a romantic comedy, and it's a little bit reflective on life and heavy themes and things. And so it steers, death and all this stuff. And you're like, wait a minute, this is not some lighthearted rom-com. What the fuck is happening? But there is that little spark of connection and romantic connection with Joe, with different characters throughout the movie, which I think makes it lean into the romantic territory a little more.
Yeah. I mean, I had a hard time trying to pinpoint the genre of this movie while watching it because it was all over the place. Like you said, like it starts going like really deep into like some philosophical bullshit. And I'm like, oh wow, this is kind of interesting. And then out of nowhere, there's like some slapstick comedy. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? So, and then you get a little bit of the romantic stuff, and so it feels like it's one of those movies that it is brilliant filmmaking that is not going to be appreciated by a mass audience.
Yes, a very niche market for this one.
Yeah.
So, Joe versus the Volcano is a turkey. Rotten Tomato critic score of 67%, audience of 54. So that's where it falls into turkey zone. The critics did like it a little more. I think they appreciated the themes. I found a few reviews where they talked about they understood the themes the movie was trying to, touch on.
Well, let's face it, critics are usually have their heads shoved so far up their asses that they're always going to agree with anything that they think is like artsy, and then if it's a cool movie, they're going to hate it.
So this movie, written and directed by John Patrick Shanley, he is also known for doing Moonstruck, Congo, The January Man, and Alive. So he has a pretty impressive filmography, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, I looked it up because watching, I was like, who the hell is this guy? His writing credits are all over the place. I mean, like I was impressed with what he's done. Even his directing, it just stood out in a way that is like, I'm very curious about his directing. I want to see the other movies he's directed. I've seen some of the ones he's written, like Congo, and I wasn't a fan.
Boo.
It
Stop eating my sesame cake.
Congo did not work for me, man. I mean, even the book didn't work for me.
I still need to read the book. Okay, so the inspiration for Joe versus the Volcano, Shanley drew from his own life all the way down to the office where Joe works in the beginning of the film. Fluorescent lighting, the pipe that says do not touch, all this random shit was actually his experience at one of his first jobs he had when he was 18. And then after he wrote the spec script for this, he sent it on over to a Mr. Steven Spielberg. And as you see when the movie's coming on, Amblin Entertainment. So Spielberg liked what he saw, obviously, because he jumped right on it. So the movie had a budget of 25 million. It only did a box office of 39.4, so not a success. The ocean scenes in the film were all shot in a studio, MGM studio tank in one of their backlots or whatever. They also shot in Hawaii, Los Angeles, and New York, which I really, really like. When you're out doing stuff, they're actually really out doing the stuff. I like that in a movie.
I do too. I don't like sometimes when they film it in a studio. It just feels like very fake.
So Joe's job in the beginning was actually filmed at an existing factory in the Los Angeles area, but they actually had people come in and custom build that crazy pathway that's outside that everybody's walking on and all the signage outside. And then the smokestacks were added in post-production. Those weren't actually there. But I think they did a great job. It looks like a real place.
It felt like a real place. It kind of had a vibe to me, almost like a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah, for sure. I want to say also, I feel like this movie, again, rom-com, I shake my head like, wow, really? Because this movie to me does a really, really excellent job of showing what a bad job can do to you, like how soul-sucking it can be and draining. This movie depicts it chef's kiss, like perfectly.
Like I was going to like mention it in my notes when it came up, but we'll just bring it up now. There are several parts in the beginning of this movie, like the first 15-20 minutes of this movie, I was depressed watching it. Like I was thinking the whole time, I do not want to watch this goddamn movie as I'm about to start job hunting, because this made me realize like I don't want to go to this.
I don't want a soul-sucking despair of a job. Yeah,
exactly.
So some other funny stuff I want to point out real quick before we jump into the plot walkthrough is this movie is rated PG. So I had to look. I've never looked at this section on IMDb before, but I did for this movie. It's called The Parent's Guide. So it's supposed to let parents know what to look out for, like red flags in different movies. And I'm like, what red flags could there be in Joe versus the Volcano? It's PG. So have I got some for you? Are you ready for this?
Oh, hit me.
Parents' Guide for Sex and Nudity. They cite several things, but the one that made me laugh so hard is Joe refers to his office as a used rubber. Yes, he does. But why are we flagging this as a parental thing? Like, what? What little kid's even going to pick that fucking up?
I mean, let's be honest. Whoever is making this list is probably a Mormon.
That's funny. So there's a few things, they see Joe naked from the side in one shot later in the movie and stuff like that. And I was like, whatever, they're reaching. So then I go to Parents Guide, Violence and Gore.
Oh my Lord. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Again, several things on the list, but my favorite one is Joe gets slapped with fish. God forbid the children see that.
Oh yeah. I can just see that. I can just see that scene like as a family, like, oh my God, Johnny, we just watched him get slapped with a fish. Are you okay? Do you need to talk about it?
So, parental guide for profanity. One use of the phrase full of piss and vinegar. What?
I was gonna say, I was like, I do not recall a lot of foul language in this movie.
No, they say 3 times people say the word shit. And they also mention the company that Joe works for in the beginning features a sign that says home of the rectal probe. How is that profanity? What? All right, 2 more. This is just too funny not to share. Parental guide, frightening and intense scenes. Joe believes he is dying throughout the majority of this film. Then why the fuck are you letting your small child watch this movie? That's all this movie's about.
Yeah, I mean that hits pretty early in the film, so I would assume like after that you just turn it off.
Right? And then the last one, parental guide for alcohol, drugs, and smoking. There are only 2 examples of this. They say the character Angelica smokes cigarettes in 2 scenes. Okay. What 80s and 90s movies don't have that?
Exactly.
And social drinking. I couldn't even tell you what scene people, I mean, maybe the whiskey scene in the beginning with the 2 men drinking whiskey, Joe, and, it's like.
I can think of maybe 3 scenes off the top of my head that had alcohol in it. The last 2 are possibly alcohol.
Such a weird parental guide for this movie. So weird.
Well, especially it's like, okay, I mean, your children are not allowed to see people drink alcohol. When did this happen? I'm sorry, America. Or I'm not going to say America. I'm sorry, world. But when did the butthurt like extend to this level that we can't even see people have alcohol now?
Yeah. And I mean, if you're worried about them seeing anybody smoking or drinking anything, just sit them down in front of the fucking Teletubbies or the Wiggles or some shit, because it's everywhere in the 80s and 90s movies.
I mean, it's everywhere in society. It's one of those things where it's like, if you cannot handle your child seeing somebody smoke or drink on television or in a movie, then I'm assuming you've got to lock them in the basement because they can't go outside.
Right? Don't send them to high school.
Exactly.
All right, so the IMDb plot. Oh, before we get to that, the top billed cast for this movie: Tom Hanks as Joe, and of course our Turkeyverse connections. We've got The Burbs and The Polar Express. We've got Meg Ryan, Lloyd Bridges, who I always forget is in this movie, and then when he pops up, I'm like, fuck yes, I love his insanity. We've got Robert Stack, Abe Vigoda, and Dan Hedaya, and we can get to everybody else as we go.
Abe Vigoda shocked the shit out of me because, like, over the last, like, maybe 5-6 years, I've become a fan of Barney Miller. I always love him as Fish on Barney Miller. So now it's like anytime I see Abe Vigoda, I go wild because he's so fucking hilarious.
I know, he's so bonkers in this. All right, so the IMDb plot for Joe versus the Volcano. When a hypochondriac learns that he is dying, he accepts an offer to throw himself in a volcano at a tropical island, and along the way there, he learns to truly live.
Let's point out the fact that, okay, you have this warning that, oh, he's going to die. He learns he's going to die. Now it's in the IMDb plot. So again, the fuck is wrong with people?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's jump in. So our movie begins with words on the screen playing to whimsical music. It says, once upon a time, there was a guy named Joe who had a very lousy job.
this was the introduction to like the second that pops on the screen, I'm like, oh shit, what the fuck am I in store for now?
Oh yeah, right. Being first time watch, you're like, what the hell is this?
I do want to point out two things real quick. One, I remember this growing up. Like it was on the back of like every comic book that I had was a page, an advertisement for this movie. I remember the TV spots. I remember going to the video store and seeing it. I do not know what compelled me to never watch this movie, but I never saw it until now. And now I'm like, I think I missed out in life.
Well, especially
Um,
I'm shocked because you're such a big Tom Hanks fan that this is
well,
one that was like a blind spot in your videography.
I mean, I've become a Tom Hanks fan over the years. It started to he started to grow on me. I'm exploring him more and more. Also, this is the first time, and I did not realize this because I always get Meg Ryan and Goldie Hawn confused because they kind of have like the similar look.
In the earlier films.
In the earlier films, the earlier days. Yeah. This is the first live action Meg Ryan movie I have ever seen in my life.
What?
Yeah, I've never seen a live action. I've heard her voiceover work in like Anastasia and in like Simpsons and a couple other like things. Live action, never fucking seen her in a movie or a TV show.
My God. Never seen a Meg Ryan movie.
Never. So this is my exposure to Meg Ryan.
My mind is blown. Wow. Well, we're gonna have to dive into her filmography.
She's never done stuff that I've cared about before because it's always been romantic comedies and stuff. So I've never been interested. This movie, I will say, she blew me away. She stole the fucking show.
Yep. And we'll get into why. This is so cool. All right. So we open now on a series of images, all gloomy, tragic in nature, gray. Tom Hanks and some fellow factory workers are all arriving at their job. We see slow moving, zombie-ish, dismal, sad looking people trudging on this weird zigzag pathway. The song 16 Tons, sung by Eric Burden, plays over as the credits roll. Credits over movie. I like it. What did you think of this opening scene?
I loved it in the sense that like so I was like sitting here like, what the hell is this? But what I loved about it was one of the things I loved about this whole movie was the soundtrack. The soundtrack to this movie is amazing, especially because I don't believe it was all the original songs. I believe a lot of them were covers. Correct. And the covers fucking nailed it. Like I was digging the music.
Me too. And it was all appropriate and fun with the scenes that they put everything with.
Exactly. I mean, I am a sucker for if you can hit the right song with the right scene in a movie, you got me hooked. And that opening part I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. Let's see where you're going to go with this.
So as they're all entering this factory, we see the big sign on the building, which I already mentioned, American Panoscope Surgical Tools, home of the rectal probe. Yes.
Which is great. I wonder if that was on purpose of home of the rectal probe and like his job. Basically, you see it on his face. His job's a pain in the ass, and it's the home of the rectal probe.
Yes, they sell surgical equipment, so it's very hilarious. We get some stuff here in a minute, also, and we get one shot, which is part of the theme in this movie. They're walking up this gray, muddy, gross pathway with stone and pebbles and whatnot. And we see a single shot of a small flower, like a little daisy, growing right up in the middle of the pathway. And everybody's walking around it. So you get this one little example of thriving life in all of this gray. And I really love that visual. When you know the theme of the movie, then it's really impactful going back, rewatching and going, oh my God, yeah, one flower.
And I like the cinematography. I mean, like this opening was just great because you got that, and then the woman is the one that steps on the flower. I like that because I was expecting one of the guy's shoes. Like, no, it was a woman's shoe that steps on it. And then the part with he steps in basically the puddle and he pulls us in like that pan up shot of him looking with his arms outstretched, looking up to God. Like, why? Like, why are you putting me through all this bullshit?
Yeah, and it's impactful, like you said. It's you got. He didn't say anything. You got all of that just from his visual performance of it. Why God? He doesn't say anything, but you got it.
Yeah, and like everyone just walking past him, like, oh, we're not even paying attention to him. Yeah, they're just ignoring him. It's
Yep.
just so great.
Yep. This movie really sets the tone, and then it goes and shifts it and takes a left turn. But in the beginning, setting the tone, it does a great job.
It does. I mean, like now, just going back and thinking on it, my appreciation for the movie is starting to grow. Like I said, like coming
Okay.
out of it is like, what the hell did I watch? And it's just like the more I'm sitting and thinking on it, the more it's starting to kind of like, oh, okay, all right, now I'm feeling your movie. Now I'm getting you.
So I really laugh because when they finally go inside the factory, there's another sign in there that says 712,765 satisfied customers, home of the rectal probe. What, do they keep track of how many people the probe gets used on? What does that mean?
I mean, my curiosity is more like this is separate rectal probes, right? We're not all sharing the same rectal probe.
So as credits end, we see Tom Hanks entering an extremely dark, dank little looking office labeled as advertising department. We hear his boss, Dan Hedaya, on the phone, and he's having this ridiculous conversation as Tom Hanks tries to hang his hat and coat on the coat rack, and it's not cooperating, and it's so frustrating.
I want to point out three things that hit me with this. One, the first thing that hit me with this was one, Tom Hanks looks like shit with long hair.
The mullet.
The mullet was terrible. That's supposed to be like business in the front and party in the back. No, it was business in the front and horrible mistake in the back. That was just awful. The boss, that conversation, like 3 seconds into it, I was already fucking annoyed. I was already like, I want to hit mute. I am so overhearing him repeat himself over and over again.
But that's supposed to tell you what a fucking moron his boss is. And you're the boss?
I mean, yeah.
I'm not arguing that with you. That's if I said that, I was wrong.
Yeah, it's.
I was cracking up.
I know he can get the job, but can he do the job? Harry. Yeah, Harry, but can he do the job? I know he can get the job, but can he do the job? I'm not arguing that with you. I'm not arguing that with you. I'm not arguing that with you. I'm not arguing that with you, Harry. Harry. Yeah, Harry, but can he do the job? I know he can get the job, but can he do the job? I'm not arguing that with you. Harry, I am not arguing that with you. Who said that? I didn't say that. If I said that, I would have been wrong. Maybe. I'm not arguing that with you. Yeah, Harry, I know he can get the job, but can he do the job? I'm not arguing that with you. I am not arguing that with you. I am not arguing that with you. Who told you that? No, I told you that. Me. What? Maybe.
I was so annoyed watching it that it didn't even hit me until literally just now of how great that scene is, because of the fact that that's what they're going for. They want to annoy you. They want to piss you off.
I'm not arguing that with you. I'm not arguing. It's like, why would you say that more than like twice?
Oh man.
Because how much of a moron is the guy that he's talking to is? Like, what? Can he do the job? I'm not arguing that with you. It's the same fucking 3 lines over and over for like 5 minutes.
It was like a scene that just dragged on, and you just, oh my God, stop. Like seriously, it needs to end.
And it makes you feel like this probably happens every day.
Yeah. Like I said, it's discussing this now. I'm reliving the movie and now starting to appreciate it. And that was brilliant because it literally puts you into his office.
Yes, you want to slap that guy and hang the phone up and be like, "Shut up." So, as Tom Hanks finally conquers the coat rack, we see he's got 2 coworkers also in there besides the boss. He's got a male coworker and a female coworker. And this is a sweet little brunette typing away on her typewriter. And this is Dee Dee. Meg Ryan She's got, I believe, brown contacts in, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe not, but I, for some reason, am remembering that I thought she did to match her brown hair.
I don't remember paying attention to her eyes.
I don't
What
remember.
what what got me was her voice. It
Yeah, the
was
way she,
I was like, wow, this is just I didn't even realize it was Meg Ryan. I had
yeah.
no idea.
So she's typing away. We see the fluorescent lighting in this dank, dark office is like some of them are flickering, and you can hear the headache inducing buzz that these lights make. And again, painting the most perfect picture of what a miserable fucking place this is. And could you imagine spending 8 hours a day there, 5 days a week?
No. Uh yeah. Like I said, it was depressing. It was just
Yeah.
like, dear God.
And he left being a fireman to do this. It's like, what? Crazy.
I could not understand how anyone, I mean, like I'm not the kind of person that would even remotely go to be a fireman. I don't have the body for it, but the bravery alone I don't have. But I would much
You're like,
rather,
I'm a pussy. I can't be a
yeah,
fireman.
no, I don't have the balls for that. My balls are not that big, okay? They're like raisins for that kind of job. But I would much rather do that than this job.
So speaking of balls, did you notice on the boss's desk he has an artificial testicle prototype situation? Looks like almost looks like a trophy.
I thought it took me a second because like when they showed it, I was like, is it a lamp? I'm like, what is this? Then I thought it was a trophy.
Meg Ryan,
And then I saw the testicle thing. I was like, why the fuck is this on your desk?
medical supply prototype. Yeah, I was fucking dying. And then because he's handling them too, or bumps them and has to pick them up. And I'm like, oh my God, they're actual little testicles. So Hanks's desk is next to a giant red pipe, like a drainage pipe, with a sign that says, do not touch. And he kind of touches it with his fingers and taps it a little for a second before he sits down, like trying to be slightly rebellious. I have to admit, I'm like that too. I mean, the intended do not touch means don't turn the fucking wheel and turn the pipe or whatever, but he's just like, like taps it. I'm
Oh yeah.
touching it. I'm touching it.
No, I get that. I would do that too. But I love the fact that Hanks did a beautiful job playing the most miserable looking son of a bitch on the face of the planet. He looked like he was just ready to pull a gun out of his desk and just end it all right then and there.
He's constantly like touching his throat and going, like he doesn't feel good all the time, you know? So he goes into his filing cabinet and takes out a little lamp with a shade and puts it on his desk, plugs it in. Did you notice what the lamp looked like and what was on the shade, the picture?
It looked like it was like a Hawaiian lamp, like an island, like a Hawaiian kind of thing.
Yep, it actually depicts the future events of the film. It has a yacht, it has a volcano with a twisty little road, a full moon, and it's playing the theme song for the movie, which is Marooned Without You. Music by, I want to say, George Delane or something. I'm sorry, I can't read my writing. And lyrics by the writer-director. So the song is played several times throughout the movie, but that's the tune that this little lamp is playing. And also it's got pictures of everything that's to come with the island.
See, that's one of those things that why you have to watch this movie multiple times because I didn't even catch that.
But you caught the Hawaii vibe, which is close.
Yeah.
So his coworker Dee Dee comes over and says good morning. She asks Joe what's with his shoe because he's got his shoe and he's picking at it. I think it's because of the incident outside, stepping in a rock and stepping in the puddle. So he's kind of fussing with the shoe. And he replies to her, I'm losing my soul. Did that line hit you when you were watching the movie or did it go over your head?
Like at the time I was kind of like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. Okay. It was, all right, that's clever movie. I get it.
It's on the nose.
Yeah, it's like as the movie goes on, then you start to kind of, like I said, this literally is a movie that not just like multiple viewings, but it starts off slow, and as it picks up, then you start to kind of get a little bit more into it. It starts to kind of pull you in.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
I was not into it in the beginning here. I was kind of like, what the hell am I watching? What is this shit?
Right. So he says he's losing his soul. She asks Joe, how are you? And he says he's kind of tired. Then she tells him he needs to send people 5 catalogs each, please. He says, well, I've only got 12 left, so I can't do it. And she just goes, okay, and walks off. Now, this is funny because several times, at least enough to count on one hand, in situations that require more dialogue or to continue the conversation, people go, okay, and that's it. This was one of those situations. She just goes, okay.
It felt very like passive aggressive, like, oh, okay. Like you
Yeah.
said, there's supposed to be more. Like you have to say more, and you're just like, oh, all right, well, we're done. I'm not talking to you anymore.
Yeah, just walks off. Okay. So then we know what she was doing because when she walked off, she ran right to Joe's boss because he comes over and asks Joe how he's doing. Joe says, I'm not feeling very good in the throat and all that, you know. And then his boss says, what else is new? You never feel good. I was like, ooh, yeah, because I have to come to this soul sucking job every day, probably.
He did a beautiful job playing an asshole, but he always does though. I feel like he always plays great, just complete jerks.
100%. I love him. So Joe mentions he's got another doctor appointment today, by the way. His boss skips over that and goes right to, why do you only have 12 catalogs? Dee Dee just told me you only have like 12 left. Joe says, well, I told you we needed more. When did you tell me? He's like, 3 weeks ago, and then 2 weeks ago. And the boss goes, but not last week. And I, in that moment, went, wow, I've had that boss in the past.
I think we've all had that boss. I think that's why opening was so depressing, because it just reminded me of what I'm gonna have to go back to. And it's like, oh
Yeah.
God, no.
He's like, but you didn't tell me last week, as if it's Joe's fault, right? So he rants at Joe about responsibilities and I can't promote you because you don't have it, you can't handle the responsibilities you do have. And I like when he says he can't allow Joe to have carte blanche. And I was like, they purposely had him say carte blanche wrong to show what a dipshit he is. However, he tells Joe that he's not competent enough to put orders into the printer. I didn't know what that meant because why would you put an order for supplies into a printer? But okay. Then he says he wants to make Joe assistant manager, but you're inflexible. And Joe says he doesn't feel inflexible. And then they get into it about Joe going to the doctor all the time. The boss says, so what? Nobody feels good. After childhood, it's a fact of life.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. But also, every time he says that, because I have watched this multiple times, it makes me so sad. Every time. I'm like, wow. So he says, get me those catalogs. And Joe's like, order them. And the boss just gives him this look like, the fuck did you just say to me? And then he yells at Joe to put his lamp away. Get that off the desk. This isn't your apartment or whatever he says. So Dee Dee comes back. Why would you after you just threw Joe under the bus? But she does. And asks, why do you let him talk to you like that about the boss? And that's the end of that scene. We get no more of that scene. We cut to Joe at the doctor's office. The waiting room in this doctor's office looks like almost like the fucking first room that Will Smith goes into to take his test to be one of the Men in Black. Like it's pretty bare. There's like nothing but a desk and a chair. There's like the weird not popcorn, that weird ceiling that businesses have with all the holes in it, like the what are those tiles made out of? Like asbestos type shit.
I know you're talking about. I remember
You know
them when I used, my old job, we had those. I remember they were terrible. I don't know what the hell it is, but yeah.
So it's this horrible waiting room. And then he opens the door to go into the doctor's office. And it's this beautiful, decked out wood furniture, beautiful bookcase, big glorious desk, window with the view. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because you're the doctor, I guess. So the doctor here, Dr. Ellison, this is Robert Stack. Many people know him from Unsolved Mysteries. As soon as he opens his mouth, you're like, hey.
The second he opened his mouth, I was expecting him to do like, tonight on Unsolved Mysteries, story of Joe versus the volcano. I was like, shit, okay.
That's what we needed, him to do some narrating on the movie.
Oh my God, if he would have narrated this movie, oh, that would have been amazing.
So Joe tells him he's always feeling tired, puffy, blotchy, mild sore throats. And then he says it's been about 8 years he's felt this way, ever since he left the fire department. I have so many questions when this happens in this scene. I'm like, why did you leave being a fireman for this fucking piece of shit job and to feel like shit every day? Like, this is so weird. What a transition.
That's your question?
Yeah. Why in this moment? Because we find out later he says why he left, but I'm like, why would you quit being a fireman for this?
My question is, how the hell was he a fireman? I mean, I like Tom Hanks, but I mean, that man does not have the build of a fireman.
Well,
I've seen like the catalogs that you women have of the firemen,
the
the half
calendars, you
naked
mean?
pictures, the calendars. Yes, calendars, catalog. I mean, to you, they're basically catalogs because you're shopping. Let's face it. But
Hey, women are firefighters, so I don't know what you're
and they
talking
are,
about with the whole build thing.
but I've seen women firefighters and they've got a good build too. I mean, like they may not have like
Okay.
the six pack abs, but like they look. It's just like Tom Hanks does not look
I hear you.
like he could do it.
I hear you. I hear you. All right. So the doc tells him your tests came back, and good news is you're clear for cancer and for blood and urine. And I was like, what? What do you mean he's clear with the blood and urine? What are you testing his urine for?
You're good. You have no blood in urine. You're okay. It's all right.
It's so fucking weird. So for that, as soon as he says that, I'm a little sus. I'm like, what? What is he saying? The doc says the CAT scan or MRI, whatever they did, I don't even know, they don't say, showed a brain cloud appearing to run down the center of his brain. So this is a made up disease. This is not a real thing.
Which, I mean, I knew that, but I was under the impression that this movie was going to go with, no, this is a real disease.
In the movie. Right.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, I knew that's bullshit. Brain fog. Okay. That's like whatever.
Right.
I thought it was going to go like that weird disease that only exists in this movie.
I forget what show or movie I saw it in, but somebody gets a CAT scan or an MRI and it shows a blotch on their brain, like a cloudy, picture. And then they do it again, the MRI or the CAT scan, whatever, and it shows it again. And then they do it on a different machine and it's not there. And they realize that the machine is putting that blotch on all the images. The person doesn't have anything wrong. It's the machine is broken. So that's what I assumed is what was happening in this. I'm like, oh, he's going to show him like a film of the MRI or the CAT scan, and he'll have like a blotchy spot. And it'll be like, oh, the machine put that on there. But they didn't even do that.
No, it's funny because it's like, because like I said, the doctor goes on to tell him that this is basically a terminal disease and you're going to die. It's got like 6 months left or something, right?
Correct.
So it's like when this happens, my brain immediately kicks into, okay, well, he's not going to die. So, okay, movie, how are you going to explain this? How are you going to get him out of this situation? So now that to me, that becomes a journey to me now. Let's see what the hell you're going to do to pull yourself out of this one.
No, I like that. The doc, without skipping a beat, tells him all that. And he says, you're going to feel fine. There's no symptoms. And you're a hypochondriac. You're making yourself feel like shit all the time. You're fine. You have nothing wrong with you. Your brain is just going to simply fail in like 6 months.
Which is like complete bullshit. Especially, I like the fact that he even brings up, oh, you want a second opinion. You probably should get a second opinion because the fact that I don't believe there are many diseases out there that you're not going to feel some kind of symptoms or effects before it happens. It's not like, it's not like turning off a light switch. Boom, you're dead.
Right. Yeah, he mentions, you should maybe get a second opinion, but then they gloss over that right away before Joe can even react. And Joe just kind of goes, well, I don't know what I'm going to do now. And the guy's like, oh, maybe take a vacation, take a trip. Do you have any savings? And Joe's like, no, like I work paycheck to paycheck. I don't have any savings. And he's like, well, maybe just, take some time off and live the rest of your life well. That's all you can do.
I like how when the savings part comes up, he even throws out there, well, no, I've spent all my money on doctors.
Yeah.
That to me was like, okay, that's relevant today.
Yes, 100%. So Joe steps out of the medical office, and this is a brilliant shot. The camera slowly pans out, and we see Joe getting smaller and smaller and smaller against this giant, nondescript brick building. He's so insignificant in this shot.
The cinematography in this movie is just amazing. That was one of the things that really stood out to me because I mean, at this point in watching, I'm still not 100% in it. I'm still just kind of like, all right, I'm watching this because it's my job to watch this movie. I'm not watching it because I want to watch this movie. This is literally my job, and I'm not having a good time. But the cinematography is keeping me glued. I'm like, oh shit, like that's a beautiful shot.
It's a fucking great shot. And
it is.
And going back and rewatching it, it'll really hit you the insignificance of one life and how small Joe actually is in the grand scheme. And this shot, without saying a fucking word, shows you that.
Yeah. God damn, man. Talking about it, I want to go watch it again now.
And the music playing over it is very sad, melancholy sounding music. And then we get this shot of the sweet little old lady. How the fuck she's controlling a Great Dane, I don't know, walking her dog right up past Joe.
The only thing I can say about that is that because it's a Great Dane, I've like, I'm not a dog person, but usually I don't hear anything bad about Great Dane. They're usually pretty, like, docile, like easy to control. It's not like it's a pit bull or something.
I mean, Great Danes, they like snacks. They like to solve mysteries. They like sandwiches.
Yeah, they're, you know what? I didn't even realize it, but that probably was Scooby and Shaggy in disguise. They were probably on a case.
There you go. Actually, the Great Dane is a fun The Burbs tie-in with Tom Hanks too, because there's a Great Dane in that movie. You remember that?
That's
now?
Right. Yeah, I forgot.
He's all, you keep
that.
a
That's
horse
right.
in the basement as it bursts out.
Oh, this is making me want to do like a fucking Tom Hanks marathon like this weekend or something.
So he pets the dog, and again, it's just music and the shot. There's no talking. And we see him hug the dog, and then he hugs the old lady. And she's like shocked, and then they walk off. But yeah, it's really sweet and funny. So then Joe goes back to work, and on his way in, he sees that daisy had been stepped on in the walkway there, and he tries to fix it and like prop it back up. He goes into his department. His boss is basically having the same phone conversation as earlier. But you can tell Joe's demeanor is different now. So he walks over to this shelf next to the boss's desk with all these like prosthetic pieces on it and starts arm wrestling this arm in classic Tom Hanks slapstick physical comedy style.
I kind of wonder, like, when filming that, did they just say, go ahead and ad-lib this shit, just do Tom Hanks stuff and we'll film it and see what happens?
Of course they did. This was, like I said, his end of a long decade of doing comedies and shit. Of course he probably ad-libbed that shit. His coworkers are watching in disbelief, Dee Dee and this other guy. Joe slaps his boss in the face with the prosthetic hand and messes up his desk, knocking the testicles all over.
Which is almost like it had to have been not planned, like just an ironic just scene to happen like that. As he loses his testicles, Joe gets his balls back.
Yes, thank you. I was going to say that. You are so funny. And then on top of that, what I like is it's so ridiculous and stupid, but you laugh at it because we just left this depressing scene where Joe finds out he's going to die. And so we need some levity, So Joe goes over to that main drain with the wheel on it and it says, do not touch. And he starts cranking that and cranking it. The boss is like, what are you doing? He's like, I've always wanted to do this, but nothing's happening. I'm so let down. Like, I've always wanted to do that. Nothing happens. The boss is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What are you doing? Joe says, I have a brain cloud. And then he quits. So he starts packing up some stuff at his desk, and I was cracking up because he's got a few random articles, the things he's brought into the office. One of them is a Robinson Crusoe comic.
Yep.
Which I went, oh, okay, tied to the theme of the movie with the island stuff, but also it predicts Castaway a few years later, right?
It really does.
And then he's got randomly some novels that he brought into work. He's got Romeo and Juliet,
which ties into the romantic aspect of the film.
Yes, sir. And the novel The Odyssey. So,
which
and then
ties
he's got
into the journey.
Yes, and he's got his lamp and a ukulele.
The ukulele was, when I saw it, I was like, what the fuck? But as the movie progresses, I love the ukulele. It was just like
it becomes the main character.
It really does. It's like it's this movie's version of Wilson.
So he gives Dee Dee his lamp and says, I want you to have this. His boss is yelling at him, and Joe gets aggressive with him for a minute, but then he backs off and he gets ready to leave. The boss yells at Joe, you'll be easy to replace. There's multiple meanings to that because Joe just found out he's dying. He thinks he's dying. And for somebody to yell at you, you're going to be easy to replace. That had to hit him on more than one level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What a horrible thing to hear.
The way that they shot that was really good because, like, yeah, it's like it goes from this slapstick comedy to there's a little bit of aggression with Joe, and then that, and it just like the whole scene stops. I don't even remember any music. Like it felt like everything just goes silent, and there's a just still shot of him, and
a close up on Joe's face.
Yeah, and it captures the mood.
But then, after a pause for a moment for us to take in what the fuck just was said, Joe says under his breath, I should say something. And you're like, ooh, is Joe going to have a backbone now? Like, since he's got nothing to lose, pretty much, right? He turns around and he says a lot. He starts ranting. He talks about how he has sold his life for a measly $300 a week, which I was shocked to hear that amount. He hasn't lived since he's been stuck there. He talks about Dee Dee and how he's been too afraid to ask her out. He rants about the conditions of the office. He roughs his boss up a little, and he says out loud one of, I think, the best lines in this movie. When he's getting ready to walk away from the boss after kind of grabbing him and roughing him up, and he's getting ready to leave, he's like, I ought to kill you, because he's so mad at his boss. And he's like, but I'm just going to leave you here. What could be worse than that? And he goes out the door.
That was a great scene. You're going off of that whole, I love every movie that has a scene where you quit your job and you just like, you go off on the boss and everyone that annoys you at work. I love that because it's, I think a lot of people do because it's that dream. You like want that to happen so bad. You want to do that.
And then he comes back in real quick and he asks Dee Dee to dinner. And she says yes, and he leaves. So then we cut to dinner where Joe is ranting about understanding the universe and who we are. And I love Meg's performance as Dee Dee. She's so funny the way she speaks. Like you said, she picks a specific way to speak for this character. And she's like, you are really intense to Joe.
She reminded me of somebody, but I cannot for the life of me remember who, like the character or the actress or whatever it was, but she reminded me of somebody. And the character was so great. I think it was about this time that I finally realized it was Meg Ryan. It took me up until
funny.
this. Yeah, because I knew she was in it. I was like, well, when is she going to show up? Like, is she going to show up later? And then finally I was like, oh shit, that's Meg Ryan.
Yeah. So Joe's telling her he feels great. He's happy. You can see his mood is better. His demeanor has changed.
It's interesting how the movie starts off so solemn and depressing and melancholy. And the moment he learns he's going to die is the moment the movie starts to pick up. It's like the moment he learns he's going to die is the moment the movie gets life.
Yeah, agreed. Because he feels like there's no fucks left to give.
Yeah.
What consequences could there be? I'm going to be dead in 6 months anyway.
Because you think about that at times of like, oh, what are you going to do if you have you find out you have 6 months to live or something?
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna try and live it up.
So Joe says, I'm feeling great. He tells Dee Dee, the first time I met you, I felt like I've seen you before. And it's like, aw. He jumps up from the table, all excited, comes back saying he bribed the musicians to come over and play them a song at their table. And they do. And during this, Joe and Dee Dee hold hands. Visibly, he's totally different. More bold, taking chances, just not giving a fuck, basically. Aside from the whole aggressively attacking your boss and quitting your job, this movie sends a message we could take a page out of this movie's book. Is give less fucks and take more chances.
When it's all said and done, what do you got left except for memories? So
yeah. So as they leave the restaurant, there's a mural on the side, painted on the side of the restaurant. Did you notice it when they're standing there for a minute on the sidewalk outside?
No, I must have missed it.
It's an advertisement for a movie or something called Fire in Paradise, and there's a big volcano erupting, and it's a tropical island.
Okay, so more foreshadowing.
Yes, and more stuff to look for on your rewatch. So they walk out into this secluded area and there's music playing and they're having like a brief chat, but we don't hear any of it. Then they go back to Joe's place and they start kissing. And Joe, right in the middle of it, blurts out to Dee Dee that he's got 5 or 6 months to live. Mood killer.
Yeah, that kind of feels like something you might want to say like after it happens.
But I get why he did it, because you have sex with somebody, you like her, maybe she likes you, and then you drop the bomb and it's like, well, fuck. Thanks a lot after I have sex with you and like you.
Yeah, but what do you care? You're gonna die.
Well, because that tells us what a good person Joe is, what a good heart he has. So Dee Dee says, I gotta go. I can't handle it. And she leaves. So the next morning, Joe is sitting in his bathrobe, playing his ukulele, just chilling, and a man comes knocking at his door. Joe lets him in. But at first we see his face when Joe like opens the door or looks, I forget how he looks. It's fucking Lloyd Bridges. And the look on his face and his crazy eyebrows and like his goofy expression.
Apparently he went back to sniffing glue.
Yes, he picked the wrong week. It was so fucking great. I was like, oh my God, I love him. So Joe lets him in. The man is acting very eccentric and like over the top, which we expect from good old Lloyd Bridges. He introduces himself as Samuel Graynamore, and he smashes a hole in Joe's wall with his cane, just walking around like fucking with shit. And I'm like, what is he doing? So he says he knows Joe and Joe's history as a fireman and calls him a hero. And then he offers Joe peanuts because he's just grabbed this can of peanuts and opened it. And I'm like, did he bring those with him? Who carries around a can of peanuts?
Apparently,
and it's not a little one either. It's so funny. So he starts bombarding Joe with 20 questions in only the way that Lloyd Bridges can. He tells Joe he spoke to Dr. Ellison and he thinks that they can help each other out. He says, I want to hire you to jump into a volcano. And then he just lights this crazy pipe that he's got. It's like right in Joe's face.
That pipe was, I mean, okay, I'm not like imagining it. That was a naked woman pipe, right? That looked like the kind of shit you see like at the front of like a ship or something, like the woman with her tits out and everything. And
that's exactly what it looked like. Yes.
Okay, because I was like, that's a crazy ass pipe to have.
So Joe grabs some whiskey and they have a drink. And Joe hears the story about the island, the Waponi Woo in the South Pacific. And they call the volcano the Big Woo. He tells Joe once every 100 years, they have to appease the god in the volcano with a willing sacrifice. A man has to jump in of his own free will. They can't find anybody on the island. None of the Waponis will volunteer to do it. He learns that the man gets a mineral. This Mr. Graynamore gets a mineral from the island that they produce to make his superconductors because he's super wealthy with this business he owns. He has lots of business ventures. He says he had made a deal with the Waponis to trade them a hero for their volcanic sacrifice for the rights to the mineral. And so he wants Joe to be the sacrifice. He's like, you're going to die anyway. You should just go out a hero, live like a king, die like a man. He explains the trip. You're going to take a flight. You're going to get a hotel. Then you're going to, here's all these credit cards. He lays out like 4 or 5 credit cards and says, you can go get whatever you need. We're going to fly you first class. Then you're going to take a private yacht to the island. And after this big exposition dump of everything that's about to happen, Joe just doesn't even hesitate. He goes, all right, I'll do it. Again, in this movie, somebody just going, okay.
I love that. But I also like the fact that it went from the extreme of when they were in the restaurant, Joe's full of life, like say he's like full of piss and vinegar. He's like pouring his heart out to Dee Dee and everything. And then after the crushing defeat of Dee Dee, now he's just kind of, he's almost back to the timidness, but he's like a more laid back kind of timid. He's just like, all right, that's cool, we'll do it.
But you have to admit, Mr. Graynamore does make a pretty good pitch, comparing him with the heroics of the firemen and the whole thing. I was like, I'm convinced I would do it. Good job.
I would too. I mean, the only thing I would want a little bit more time. It's hey, I got like 6 months. Can we get like, more time before I have to do this? Because I want to enjoy the money and everything before I die. But I would do it too.
So Joe rents a limo for the day and heads out shopping. His driver is Ossie Davis, Marshall, his driver. And we have a Turkeyverse tie-in here with Bubba Hotep. I love this man as an actor. He's phenomenal. He asks Joe where you'd like to go. Where do you want to go, Joe? And Joe says, I don't know. I have to shop. And the driver's like, well, what are you getting? And he's like, clothes. So the driver pulls over and gets into the back and sits with Joe face to face, super chill, and just says, I can't tell you what to buy because I can't tell you who you are. He says, clothes make the man. He's hired to drive the car, not tell Joe who he is. This seems like a super easy little bit of dialogue, throwaway. But again, in this movie, it's a little theme that hits hard if you pay attention. I really like that. The clothes make the man, and I can't tell you who you are.
This whole scene is probably one of my favorite scenes of the entire movie because, and this is where it starts to suck me in. One, Marshall becomes my favorite character of the whole movie. And then two, it's like, we go from this conversation to him saying like, well, I can't tell you this because this seems like a deeper thing than just, oh, you got to go get some clothes. This is about basically, I don't know who you are, what kind of clothes you want, till we go to the shopping montage. And it feels like the shopping montage is way more than just a typical, oh, I'm going to go buy some new clothes. There's this underlining like meaning of this is Joe also kind of finding a new life.
Yes. So Joe explains his situation to Marshall and says, I'm going away on a long trip, tells him about the island, and they have this little, exchange about that. And then we get a music montage. Marshall drives them to Armani, and Joe says, they're both dressed in tuxes. And he's like, well, if I'm getting a tux, you're getting a tux. And Marshall's like, I can't afford a tux. And he's like, well, it's a thank you from me for all your advice. I love that. So next, they head to Dunhill for some more clothes. After that, they head to Horn of Africa for safari gear. And we only see him buy this goofy hat, this like safari hat.
The freaking hat was ridiculous.
So then Marshall says, I need to call my hairdresser friend. Then we show a quick thing of him at the hairdresser's getting a haircut. Joe's losing the mullet finally and getting his traditional Tom Hanks haircut.
That was great because that mullet was killing me.
So did you notice who the hairdresser was here in this quick little scene with her crazy black wig?
I meant to look it up, but it looked like, and you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, is that Janine from Ghostbusters?
That would be Annie Potts, and no, it is not her.
Okay.
Good guess, though. So it's Carol Kane. And in the credits, she's actually credited as Lisa McCain or something like that. It doesn't even say Carol Kane. So I was like, wait a minute, that's fucking Carol Kane. So I go to the IMDb for Carol Kane. Joe versus the Volcano is listed, and it says she's credited as Lisa whoever.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was completely off then. So that was another one that like Meg Ryan completely threw me off. I did not know that was Carol Kane. And
that's funny.
I fucking love Carol Kane too. She's amazing.
I know. So, and she's only in it for like 5 seconds. So then Joe then splurges on a travel radio, a Swiss Army knife, a mini putting green, a shaving kit, some brass lanterns, a giant umbrella, and a violin case bar, which I've always wanted. I don't really drink, but I was like, that's fucking cool.
Oh.
So the last stop is a luggage store where Joe makes the sales guy's fucking life. He makes this guy's year. He probably got a huge commission on these. Joe buys 4 holy grail of suitcases. They are these large steamer trunks with tons of compartments. And the guy points out, watertight, guaranteed.
This scene, I don't know if I'm the only person that's going to pick up on this or not, but the way the salesman was selling the luggage and the way it was displayed, it almost felt like when you go shopping for a coffin. The demeanor, because the demeanor of the salesman and the way that the thing was set up, I remember having to shop for a coffin, and that's exactly what it was fucking like.
Yeah, he opens it up and it looks almost religious, and you hear like oh music and shit.
It was like I don't know if okay, I must be the only person that picked up on that, you know.
That's crazy. So then we cut to an outside shot. All four of these big ass steamer trunks are strapped to the top of this limo, making it look really, really tiny. And we hear Joe telling Marshall to take him to a really nice hotel. So Marshall drops him off at some place called the Pierre. And again, another impactful little scene of dialogue here. Marshall and Joe are saying goodbye, and Joe says, you know, maybe you should come have dinner with me. Do you want to come have dinner with me? And Marshall says, I can't. I've got, you know, a wife and kids I have to get home to. I'm so sorry. He's like, don't you have anybody you could ask? Joe says, no. And then he thinks for a second, and then he says, but there's certain times in your life when I guess you're not supposed to have anyone. You know, certain doors that you have to go through alone. Just sit with that for a second.
This fucking movie, man, it just like it hits you with the really deep thoughts.
Which you don't expect.
No.
And you're just like, wow, okay. Like, again, you don't have to be dying to let these messages hit home and employ them in your life. Like, use these things in your life. There's certain doors where you just need to go through them alone. Yeah, you don't need somebody to hold your hand all the time in certain situations. Like, it was just like, wow, this movie. So then we cut to Joe in his room with all his gear, and we get this really cool version of Blue Moon playing the song. Then we see Joe eating alone at this nice table. The song continues, and then we cut to Joe going to the hotel bar. Then we see Joe walking outside. Okay, here I'm going to hit you again with something. He stops for a minute because as he's walking down the sidewalk, a group of people get out of a car and pass in front of him. So he has to stop for a second. And it's a group of elderly people, some couples, like 4 or 6 elderly people. If you're not paying attention, you really would miss it. But there's a moment where they show Joe and there's this subtle expression on his face. He stops and lets this elderly people walk right in front of him. It hits him. You can tell on his face. He's not going to have that. He's not going to be old like that.
Okay, I kind of caught that. I didn't catch the old part. I caught because they were, like I said, the couples. And so I kind of thought, like, well, he was not going to find anybody. He wasn't going to have a chance.
Old with them.
Yeah, the growing old part kind of flew over because I didn't really pay attention to them being older.
Yep, they all had gray hair.
Yeah, so I'm not an asshole. I don't pick up like, I don't like purposely look for old people like, oh, look, it's old people.
No, that's the point of that, though.
I'm not an ageist or anything. I just saw people.
You're supposed to see
I just saw people. I didn't see old people, just people.
Well, then you missed a subtle thing that they were saying in the movie, sir, because you're supposed to notice that they're old because it hits him. Yeah, that I'm not going to grow old and have that.
I still picked up on the couples part.
You did. So then we fade out to Joe on his bed and into a plane landing. He exits the plane and he sees a woman holding a sign with his name on it. This big, like a sign I would do, like markers and stickers and shit and all bedazzled.
Yeah.
Very colorful. And she's got this crazy curly red wig on, this hair. This is Meg Ryan, saying that she's the daughter of the man that hired him. Her name is Angelica Grainamore. Green contacts in her eyes, from what I could tell, and this red wig. Again, employing a different way of speaking for this character.
I think it was at this point that I was like, all right, she deserved a fucking Oscar for this movie because this is the second time we see her as an entirely different character, different tone of voice, different look. I mean, like, unless you like really paying attention, you probably would miss that it was her.
Yeah.
And this is my favorite character that she played in the movie. I loved Angelica.
She says, what are you doing for my father? Wait, never mind. He said not to tell me because I can't be trusted. I'm a flibbertigibbet. So he's not supposed to tell her what their work deal is. And off they go. So they drive up the coast and then stop for dinner at this pretty nice restaurant. And in this scene, all I kept thinking was, she reminds me so much right now of Nicole Kidman.
Oh my gosh, she did.
You see that too?
Really
yeah.
did. Yeah, I'm picturing it now. Yeah.
One of the most random things in the fucking movie. It's this 2-second thing that means nothing. And I'm like, why did they leave it in? Purely for my enjoyment, clearly. They're sitting at the table, and this waiter comes over with this 4-foot long pepper grinder. This is the biggest pepper grinder I've ever seen in my life. It was the size of a small child. He just comes over and he's like, "Pepper, sir?" And he's like, "No, thanks." And then walks away. That's it. But it was fucking hilarious to me for some odd reason.
The insanity of like some of the scenes in this movie just are fucking, like you said, you're sitting here watching, you're like, what the hell does this have to do with anything? And it makes you laugh, and you're just like, I'm glad it's in the movie. It's great.
Yes, it almost made me go like, what the fuck crazy ass pretentious restaurant is this that they have to have an obnoxious 4-foot long pepper grinder? Like, why? Just because they can. It's LA. So Joe tells her what he used to do for a living, being a fireman, and then I went to being, whatever job I had. He goes on this little spiel, and she just looks him dead in the face and goes, "I have no response to that."
This is why I absolutely loved Angelica. I love that whole, I have no response to that.
Yeah.
I want to start using that shit now.
So she tells Joe, well, I'm a painter and a poet. And then we see a piece that she did on the wall. And it looks like just a standard pop art comic strip. It's very weird. It's clearly her car, her convertible, and her and some dude sitting there in the car. It's so bizarre. Then we fade from that to her real car, sitting overlooking the lights of Los Angeles at night. Her and Joe are sitting there. And did you see her license plate said "bad girl"? It's so tacky.
But it speaks to the character, because the character, I mean,
yeah,
like you have to, I mean, like, okay, if you've never seen this movie, if you're listening to this and you've never seen this movie, we cannot do justice to Angelica. You have to experience Angelica. Just the look, the accent that she's speaking in, everything is just, it's fucking golden.
Fucking delivery, especially the next part where she just asked Joe, "Would you like to hear a poem?" He's like, "Sure." And she goes, "Long ago, the delicate tangles of his hair covered the emptiness of my hand." And she like rubs her hand and she's looking all serious, like she's going to cry. And then Joe goes, "What's wrong?" Wait, no, before he says what's wrong, she goes, there's like dead air. And then she just goes, "Would you like to hear it again?" And she just does it again, like twice. And then she looks like she's going to cry. And Joe's like, "What's wrong?" I crack up every fucking time at her delivery of that stupid poem. Were you laughing or were you like in shock? Like, what the fuck am I watching?
I was in a moment of like, I was laughing, but I was also in shock. I was just so sucked into Angelica's character. It was like everything was completely over the top and ridiculous. It blew me away. I loved this character.
So this movie is about a man who thinks he's dying and death as a device. But I want to say trigger warning, because they mention suicide here. The movie suddenly goes super dark because she starts crying and Joe's like, "What's wrong?" And she just goes, "Do you ever think about killing yourself?" And Joe says, "Why would you do that?" And she's like, "Why wouldn't I?" And I'm just like, wow, this movie took a weird turn.
It did, but it's like at the same time, it kind of touched on, because essentially that's what Joe's going to do. He is going to kill himself by throwing himself into the volcano.
Right. But he says to her, "Why would you do that?" And she's like, "Well, I'm a grown woman. I live on my father's money. And the only reason that painting was up in that restaurant is because my father owns the restaurant." And I like that Joe says, if you have a choice between killing yourself and doing something you're scared of, why not take the leap and do the thing you're scared of? And she says, "Well, the thing I'm scared of is to stop taking my father's money and leave LA." And Joe's like, "You should do it." She gets defensive, though, over that. Joe says he's got no time to waste sitting here. She says, "I have no response to that." Again, Joe says, "Just take me back to my hotel." It's a very dark, very weird, unsettling conversation. So they get back to the hotel and she asks Joe if he wants her to come up. "Can I come up?" And he's like, no, it's fine. He declines, again, showing how clueless she is at reading people. He does agree to meet her for breakfast in the morning, however, because she's the one that has to pick him up to take him to the boat anyway. And she just looks real serious at him and says, "I told you I was a flibbertigibbet." But instead of going into the hotel now after Angelica drives off, Joe decides to walk over to the beach nearby and sits on the sand by himself and watches the sunrise. It's a poignant moment because I'm like, oh, he's like enjoying, one last little thing like that. Like it's so sad. Like if you knew you only had a few months to live, like would you take time to go sit and like watch a sunrise or a sunset and like reflect on things? Like totally.
I don't know. I've never really been into the whole sunrise, sunset kind of thing. Like that's not really my.
Maybe you would if you knew you were dying in 6 months.
I don't know. Like if I had 6 months left to live, there's probably some other things I would be thinking of.
All right, so we cut to breakfast as Angelica apologizes for being so grotesque last night. And the cafe that they're having breakfast in is like a tropical themed cafe. Did you notice that?
Yes.
And there are fucking birds in cages in the cafe. I hate that. And I feel like that would be a health department violation to have cages with bird feces in them right by your table.
Okay, so I have to ask, what is it you hate about it? Is it the birds in the cages, or is it just the fact that there's birds in a restaurant?
The fact that the birds are all over right by the tables and they shit in their cages and they smell. I've had pet birds in the past, several over the years. They stink. That can't smell good when you walk into the diner. It can't be appetizing.
Okay. I'm a very picky person when it comes to a restaurant. Like I won't even eat in a restaurant if someone's got a dog there. Don't, like, your dog does not belong in the fucking restaurant. This is not where the dog stays at home. You feed the dog at home. You don't bring the dog, not even McDonald's. Do you bring the dog into McDonald's and eat with the dog?
So does your cat free roam your house at home?
At the house, that's different. But
How?
like, and when you're in
Your
public,
cat goes in the kitchen where you have food and gets on the counter and probably licks stuff. Most cat owners let their cats do that.
I would not let my cat lick anything. I mean, one, I don't have a cat right now, so like everything is, sanitary. But
so you're admitting when you have a cat, it's not sanitary.
well, when you have any animal, it's not sanitary. But it's like also it's one of those things. When I go out to a public place, I expect that public place to be sanitary, and like this is where I'm going to get away from everything. I want no dogs, no. I mean, hell, I don't even want kids there. But unfortunately, we cannot euthanize children yet. So.
Oh my God. This just got dark. Going along with the theme of the movie. Shit.
But no, so I agree. No birds. No birds.
Okay, cool. We're on the same page with that because I was grossed out watching it. We find out Angelica's half-sister Patricia is going to be captaining the yacht. What's the word for that? Skippering?
Yeah. That's a damn good point. What is it? Sailing the boat?
There you go. Okay.
We'll go sailing.
So they arrive now at the dock and we see Patricia, and this is Meg Ryan with her pretty blue eyes, her natural long blonde hair, waiting down at the dock, condescendingly yelling up to Joe and Angelica, calling him Felix. And he's like, that's not my name. And she's like, I'll call you Felix because I can do what I want. Well, bitch. Okay, you're a bitch. Got it.
First introduction of her, I was not a fan. I liked Angelica better.
But you knew that was Meg Ryan right away, though, correct?
Yeah, this time I did know because it was, like you said, traditional. Her classic hair, her eyes, like everything. Like, okay, this is Meg Ryan. Now we're getting the Meg Ryan. I was disappointed in the yacht. I will say that, because when you say a yacht, I'm picturing a big ass fucking boat that like has a pool, like a real yacht. Like when you say yacht, what do you
like
what
a
do you
cruise
imagine?
ship?
Yeah, like almost like a cruise ship. That's in my mind. When I hear yacht, I'm thinking big ass fucking boat.
Have you ever been on a yacht?
No.
Or a cruise ship or any seafaring vessel?
I've been on a ferry.
Okay.
Traveling from one side of, I think it was Oregon. No, it was Washington. One side of Washington to another. But that's the only thing I've ever been on. This is just going off of, I guess, pop culture, television. When you see a television show that says yacht, you picture a big ass boat.
So I did think it was a little small as well. I was like, interesting. Okay, whatever.
I mean, this made the SS Minnow look like a cruise ship.
This has less people on it than the Minnow did. So
that is true.
Joe kisses Angelica on the cheek and they say goodbye. She waves to Joe as he tosses his crazy safari hat into the ocean. I was like, no, don't do that. You're going to need that later. But he throws it away.
It was kind of a weird scene because it's like, okay, we saw the hat like a couple of times. Why did he throw it away all of a sudden? Like, what crawled up his butt to decide, I don't want the hat?
So music plays now as we get shots of them sailing, and everything's beautiful and sunny, and the water looks gorgeous. Then we cut to them having dinner on the deck. It's just Joe and Patricia. It's super fancy too, what they're having. But her father's footing the bill, so
It kind of made me wonder, it's like, okay, like how big is this boat that they're cooking? They got a personal chef, because I remember him saying that he had a personal chef on his yacht.
yeah.
So that's again why I was expecting a bigger boat. So when I saw this
Yeah.
one, I was like, where the hell is this guy cooking at?
There's got to be a galley underneath because there is two different sleeping quarters. Patricia mentions the boat is called the Tweedledee. And in this moment, when they're just chatting, I was like, they move on to the next topic. And I'm like, that's it? There's no story why your boat's called the Tweedledee? Wah wah.
I would have liked to have like some kind of story, because immediately I went to, well, where's the Tweedledum?
So then she asked Joe, why are we going to Waponi Woo? Joe doesn't say. And she grabs a book and she goes, well, I do know a couple things about the Waponi. She says, I know that they love orange soda. I crack up at this bit every single time. What a random, weird thing.
It's a random, weird thing, but at the same time, I was like, this is my island, because I love me some orange soda. So it's like, I would love to be on this island.
Yeah, they're obsessed with orange soda. So Joe asks her, why did you talk to me so snotty back on the docks? And I'm like, yes, here is Joe. He's showing up. He doesn't give two fucks. He's confronting people about shit. He's saying what he wants to say. She says, because you work for my father, and I'm angry at my father because he's never around. She adds that she's taking Joe as a favor to her father because he agreed to gift her this boat in return. And this is where she mentions there's two boats, the Tweedledum and the Tweedledee. My father's got two. I was like, oh, okay, so there is a Tweedledum. Cool.
I mean, the moment you hear Tweedledee, there has to be a Tweedledum. It's almost like someone doing the shave and a haircut 2 bits, but like not finishing up with the 2 bits part. You're just like, you're sitting here on the edge of your seat like, come on, where's the fucking 2 bits?
Right. Then we cut to bedtime. Patricia apologizes for being so rude to Joe and asks him if he had sex with Angelica. And Joe says no. She dives into this Oscar sizzle reel moment. This is like a great monologue about who she is, how unhappy she is with herself because she had a price. Her father was able to name her price. She's feeling soul sick. I mean, this monologue, I didn't write it word for word, but it is so impactful and so well done. What did you think?
It was good. And it was another scene that it just like kind of comes out of nowhere, in the sense of like, okay, you're not expecting this huge dramatic moment, especially from her, only because the past 2 characters she played were so fucking off the wall, like characters. And then here's this real woman finally. So like every time this movie like gets me like, oh, okay, now I know where you're going. Something happens. I'm like, what the fuck did you just do, movie?
Yeah, it constantly is taking a left turn.
Exactly.
So she caps off this beautiful monologue by saying that, we're going to be on this boat for a while. And so I thought that we should be open and honest with each other and just enjoy the journey. And then she ends it by saying, maybe tomorrow we can fish. So then we cut to the next day and we get a montage of them all fishing with the song Good Lovin' by the Rascals. This song is great for this scene.
It really was.
But I always remember it from an episode of the show Moonlighting with Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd, where they did The Taming of the Shrew. He sings it. So I always think of that personally. But in this movie, it's great for this scene. So we also see part of the crew is somebody named Dagmar, and this is Amanda Plummer, and we have a Turkeyverse connection with her. She was in So I Married an Axe Murderer as the crazy axe murdering sister. So yeah, she's here on the boat, and there's a couple other people, and they're fishing, and the montage ends with Joe pulling a hammerhead shark puppet up out of the ocean and they're face to face with it and everybody's screaming, including the puppet shark.
The scene just, I was like, the only reason I didn't laugh was because I was just so dumbfounded by what I had just watched, but it was fucking hilarious. Literally in my notes, I wrote, oh my fucking God, that fake ass shark laughed my fucking ass off. The puppet is horrible. It's like, that's what they're going for. They want a bad puppet shark. I mean, that's
Yes.
not like, again, it comes from, you have this Oscar-worthy like monologue to, oh, we're going to do the fishing, and then you get the cute montage. Like, okay, again, you're taking another swerve to the slapstick of him trying to reel the shark in.
Yes,
which is fucking ridiculous. And then you go to the shark, and it's like this movie just steadily goes downhill.
Yes,
but in an amusing way.
So night falls. And out on deck, we see Joe and Patricia sitting there. And he tells her that she is, in fact, leaving him on the island. He's not coming back with her. She says, well, if I could, I would sail away. And he's like, where would you go? And she says, away from the things of man. Boy, does that sound great to me.
It does on the surface. I mean, I'm one of those people that like, yeah, you want to be like, I want to get away from it all. Like multiple times in my life, I have said, I want to go to a monastery, a Zen monastery, and just live among the monks and forget all of everything, leave everybody behind. And then
that's
I realized,
a bit extreme.
Yeah. Then at that point, I realized I would be bored shitless because I wouldn't have anything.
Yeah, that's a bit extreme. Mine is just, tropical island, get away from it all. But okay, monastery, that's a bit extreme.
Well, I mean, what's the difference between the monastery and the tropical island? Tropical island, you have nothing.
I'm getting fucked on a tropical island. That's the difference.
How? Like with what? You bringing somebody with you?
Fuck yes. Duh. All right. So he asks her if she believes in God. Her response is, I believe in myself. And Joe says, what does that mean? And she just says that she has confidence in herself. Joe says, well, in all my recent soul searching, I've discovered that I have no interest in myself. I'm actually quite boring. Were you like, relatable?
Very. That scene hit me. I was like, yeah, okay. There's a lot of times where someone will ask me like, oh, well, what's going on in your life? And I immediately come back with nothing. Why do you keep asking me every day? It's the same thing that happened yesterday.
So then we get this next little bit, which again, on theme with the movie and super impactful if you take a minute and just think about it. Joe says, now that I've had some space and distance from what my life has been for the last however many years, he finds it unbelievable that he lived that life, that he lived like that. And I'm just like, yeah. How many times have you stepped away from a situation, a job, a relationship, a situation, whatever, and you got some time, got some perspective, and went, why the fuck was I doing that? Why was I living my life that way and giving my energy to XYZ?
That, and then sometimes there's times where you walk away and you're amazed you were able to handle a situation.
Yeah. So they get close enough now where they could actually kiss. And Joe blurts out what the plan is. I'm dying. I'm going to the island, jump the volcano, blah, 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 blah. Like just word vomit, spits it all out. Patricia jumps up and is visibly shocked and says, is your disease catchy? He's like, no. And then she goes, okay, well, I'm going to bed now. And she leaves.
It's a dick question to ask, but at the same time, it's a good question to ask because, yeah, it's like, you want to know, I'm not going to catch this, right?
So Joe goes below deck and finds Dagmar watching all the instruments and gauges, and she tells him there is a typhoon warning. Cut to out on deck now, Joe and Patricia talk about the imminent storm. The winds start to pick up. The waters are becoming ridiculously turbulent, tossing this little ship around.
This is like when they were talking about it, they have that green, eerie lighting on the ship, right?
Yeah, it's like a fog and everything looks, still and dark and creepy. Almost like a Voyage of the Demeter creepy, like, yeah, it's fucking cool.
it was like, again, it was another tone shift in the movie that kind of caught me. Of like, I think this was about the time that I started to kind of think this was like a Tim Burton movie, because it just felt like really
Yeah.
weird. I love the scene though. It was beautifully shot.
So Patricia runs down below deck and starts calling for help. Mayday, mayday, and nobody's answering. She goes back out on deck. Joe follows her, and now they're soaking wet. They stop and have this kiss out of nowhere in this crazy turbulent moment. And then Patricia gets knocked unconscious and into the water by this, a sail beam that just comes flying. And Joe dives in after her after he takes a moment and hesitates. And I'm like, why are you hesitating? Jump in after her. And he finally does. For a minute, though, he thinks he's not going to find her. He dives underwater. And again, weird, random thing. It's a tense, scary, like heavy scene. She's unconscious. She fell in the water. He jumps in to get her. It's dramatic. And when he goes to go underwater to look for her, he's got bare feet and his little feet are kicking to get himself under the water. And then he comes up without her. And then he goes to dive in and you see his little feet kicking, trying to get down under the water again. It's so stupid, but it's really fucking funny to me for some reason. I feel like it was intentional on their part.
It's like they didn't really know what direction to go with this movie at times. Like they're trying to build up tension and dramatic and all this stuff, and then the little feet kicking, it just made you like, what the hell? Like it just kind of like it killed the mood.
Right. I feel like they were like, we need this weird little moment of levity. Let's put this in here, and it's so stupid and random, but it works for me. I crack up.
This whole movie was just a complete mindfuck.
So Joe gets her, finds her, comes to the surface, and then he looks over and sees a cartoon lightning bolt come down and strike the yacht, cutting it in half, and it sinks.
That was ridiculous with the cutting it in half part. I was like, no explosion, no catching on fire, just cuts in half, boom, goes in the water. What the fuck?
And you expect in this movie, you're like, cartoon lightning bolt? Yep, that tracks.
I think it was at this point where, in fact, it was after the shark, after the fake shark, where nothing in this movie that happened surprised me in the least. I was like, okay, this is a basically Warner Brothers cartoon brought to life. Anything that can happen is going to happen. Let's just see what they do.
So we see that his trunks, his big airtight, watertight, steamer trunks start popping up in the water. We cut to the next day. Joe has put all of them together, all four of them, and made sort of a makeshift raft. He's got Patricia lying on it. He secures them all with this rope, and he's just holding this little raft together. God bless him. And he's got bottled water, which he keeps pouring. She's unconscious, so he's pouring a little cap full and like putting it in her mouth every so often. He's got an umbrella. That big ass umbrella is keeping the sun off of her as she's lying there unconscious. He's got the lanterns. All the stuff in his cases, basically. He was smart enough to strap them to where he could open them and get stuff out. He's got that radio. How is he turns it on and gets music. They are so far from land, but he manages to get a radio station playing music. Explain that one to me.
That's the thing that made you go like, huh, how does that work? Out of everything that we've seen in this movie, that's the one thing that you're going to pick out. I mean, like,
Yep. That's the one thing I had a problem with.
Like I said, at this point, like I expected, like, at any moment there was going to be a shipment from Acme showing up. So I was like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen.
So he starts dancing, doing this funny little dance, and it's a little moment of levity as well. Then we cut to the next day. Joe's sitting on the edge. They're floating in the water. He's shaving with his little shaving kit.
That was like, what the hell? You're gonna take time to shave?
What else has he got to do all fucking day while they're floating? So later that night, he's sitting there playing his ukulele and singing. Then during the next day, he's golfing until the wind blows it up. I cracked up. I was like, well, there goes your golf.
I kind of wondered, like, for a brief moment, I was like, were these like the deleted scenes from Castaway?
So Joe continues to give unconscious Patricia that little bit of water. Several days pass.
So several days. At what point, I mean, this woman's been unconscious for so long, like, do you start to kind of think, like, maybe she's brain dead?
Or just dead?
Well, I would assume she wouldn't be dead because he probably would at least check the pulse and everything. But it's like,
true. See if she's breathing.
To be out cold that long, that would kind of make me think, like, maybe she's in a coma or something.
Agreed. Because several more days pass, and then one night, Joe hallucinates seeing the vivid constellations in the sky, which looks really cool, actually. More days pass, and then one night they come across a very full moon. And this is the imagery that I always relate with this movie because this was the cover of the VHS box, the rental box, was them standing
Right.
in front of this big, beautiful full moon.
I remember that. This was one of those VHS boxes that just popped. Like you went into the rental place, and this was one of those movies that you just saw, and you're like, "This is a gorgeous fucking cover."
Right. And it never piqued your interest, though, seeing that cover. You were like,
There was just so many other movies that
yeah.
I wanted to see, and plus, like at that age, I was like spending half my time trying to sneak into the section that had the pornos.
All right. So I can picture that actually. That tracks. So Joe is standing up to admire the moon. You can see he's sunburned. He looks really ragged. And he basically breaks down, prays to God, thanks him for his life, and then he just faints. He like passes out. The next day, Patricia wakes him up and gives him some water and was like, "Why haven't you been drinking some of this water for yourself, crazy guy?" He's like, "It was for you." I'm like, "Oh, so cute." We see now a Waponi Islander holding his can of orange soda and looking through a telescope, and he sees Joe and Patricia. And did you see the name of the soda, by the way?
I tried to catch it, but I couldn't tell. Like it almost looked like the can design almost looked like a Fanta.
It said Jump Soda.
Okay.
It did look like a Fanta design, yeah, and it was called Jump. I was cracking up.
I like when they call the tribe, and I could have swore I saw one woman that had soda cans covering her tits.
Yes, she did. And they had
Hilarious.
some of them had necklaces made out of crushed soda cans, and all their outfits have soda cans all over them. I was fucking dying.
It was so batshit crazy. Like I said, like especially at this part, once they get to the island, it literally turns into a fucking Looney Tunes cartoon.
My favorite part is that all the islanders that we see at first are darker skinned, like they look like South Pacific Islander people. And then when we get a close up later of a bunch of them, they're just like white, like dudes they probably picked up at the local hotel bar and were like, "Hey, you want to be in a movie?" And they throw the stuff on them. There's a bunch of like regular white guys. I'm like, what?
I appreciate the fact that it's like they did that, but they didn't go because it's like this is still like okay pre butthurt era, as I like to call it, where everyone gets butthurt over everything that happens in a film. So they didn't like paint them up to look like Pacific Islanders. They're just like, nope, you're white. We don't care. Throw the shit on. You're cool.
Yeah, it was really fucking funny. So they get Patricia and Joe onto the island. They lead them with great fanfare to meet the chief of the tribe, Toby. And this is Abe Vigoda, which again, I'm like, old white dude again, like he's the chief of the tribe. It's hysterical.
And it's great that it's like Abe Vigoda just being Abe Vigoda. He's not trying to play a character. He's just being himself.
Oh, he doesn't try to, affect an accent. He doesn't try to do anything crazy. He's just being, himself. It's so funny. But he's dressed up all in this garb with soda cans and face paint and the whole thing. He tells Joe, "Tonight we will have a big feast. And after that, you are to jump into the big woo." And Joe just goes, "Okay." So then we cut to Joe and Patricia individually getting gussied up and ready for the big feast. The tribesmen are singing as they're doing Joe, and then the women, we get this beautiful, soothing music they're singing as they're doing Patricia. They're having two very different experiences.
Yeah, very different experiences.
Please tell me this got you giggling.
I was dying.
He's sitting there naked. His bits are covered, but he's sitting there on this cold stone under some running, like waterfall-ish type water, and the men are all around him, and they're dumping cold buckets of water on him. And one of them mashes a banana in his face, and they all start cracking up. They lay him down on his stomach, and they're beating him with fish, these big fishes. And you can just hear him slapping against his skin.
And I could have swore because it just happened so much, and I was dying. I could have swore there was a scene where they're sucking on his feet.
They're nibbling his feet, and he's like, "Hey, don't do that." Everyone, if you look at them, they're all laughing. They're all enjoying it. They're all wearing the soda can clothing, which is so fucking funny. And then the crazy shit they're doing to him, this whole thing makes me laugh. They top it off by putting a baby octopus on his face, and he's fighting to get it off his face. And he's like, "That's it. That's enough. I'm out of here." to Patricia. She's getting pampered, fingers gently gliding across her skin. They're spritzing her with some stuff. She's got flowers on, and they're just, pedicure, manicure type situation. Like, it's so soothing. And then you cut to Joe getting beat with a fish. What?
Fucking fish was just, oh my God.
It's nuts. It's so bonkers. So then later that night, the festivities are well underway. Joe shows up in his tux looking real snazzy. The ceremonies get stopped when two tribesmen come swinging in on vines and smack their bodies right into these two large gongs. And Abe Vigoda just face palms.
Yeah. I love his reaction. He's just like, oh my God, really? It almost felt like he was chief just because like he was the only one smart enough to become chief.
Yes, that's exactly how I felt too. So the chief then recaps what's going to happen and tells Joe, I will go ahead and call upon my people one last time for a hero to step up and volunteer to jump into the Big Woo. The volcano shakes the island. No one steps up. Joe just gets up and says, take me to the volcano. We see a quick cut of Patricia, who looks visibly upset now at this point. Joe looks back at her and then turns, and off they go up this winding path up to the volcano.
My cheeks are hurting from laughing.
So Patricia's trying to run after Joe. They make it up to the top of the volcano. Joe asks if there's a ceremony. What's going to happen now? Are we doing a big ceremony? And the chief just goes, no, you just jump in. Okay. So the volcano shakes again, and Patricia says to Joe she loves him. She's never loved anyone and has no clue how it happened because they never even slept together. How is that possible? I can love you. And I was like, I think that's possible. I do, actually. But okay. So she's upset now that Joe's jumping into the volcano, and she says, you can't die and leave me here without you. Here's where we get to the uber romantic portion, right? Where she's professing her love for him. Don't jump. Don't leave me.
I don't know about you, but it kind of bothered me that she did this because it was like, you knew going in. He told you before the boat sank, this was the plan. I'm going to die anyways. I'm going to jump into the volcano. And it's like, even if he doesn't jump into the volcano, he's still going to die.
Yes. So Joe says, I have to jump. I have a chance to die like a man, and I'm going to take it. I'm dying anyway. I'm taking this chance. He yells that he loves her too, but your timing stinks. And he kisses her on the cheek and takes off. He heads up to this platform that's hanging over the mouth of the volcano. Patricia runs up and says, marry me to Joe. And he's like, what? So she calls the chief up and says, Chief, I want you to marry us. And Joe says, I don't want to get married. So she says to him, you're going to jump in the volcano. You can't love and honor me for 30 seconds. It's a 30-second commitment. Just marry me.
That's a good point.
The chief just goes, do you want to marry Joe? Yes. Do you want to marry her? Yes. Good. You're married. I'm going now. And he leaves.
I love that scene because it's like two different scenes because you got them doing their thing of like being cute and arguing with each other and this like romantic comedy thing, and then Abe Vigoda just being Abe Vigoda. I'm old. I'm done. I want to leave now.
Yes. So Patricia asked Joe one last time, please don't jump. Don't jump. Joe says, listen carefully because these are my last words. He says, I gotta be brave and jump in. Goodbye. Hands her his jacket, walks up to the edge as fire starts to kick up and some steam and everything's shaking. At first time watch, are you like going, oh my God, is he really going to jump?
I knew he was going to jump, but I was like, something's going to happen. It's like, I don't know what, but they're going to get out of it somehow.
So Patricia walks out to the edge with Joe and says, I've got last words too. Why are you the only one who gets last words? She says, I've got nothing. So I've got to be with you. I'm going to jump. I'm jumping with you. Joe says, no, I don't want you to. And she goes, we're going to take this leap and just see what happens. That's life. Again, a great line. Let's just take the leap and see what happens. That's it. That's life. You take chances. You just do shit. Fuck it. I mean, I love that. That's so great. He reflects on life leading him to her, and he adds, did I ever tell you the first time I saw you, I felt like I've seen you before? Did you go, yeah, because you have at least twice.
I was like, that was obviously a joke for the audience to just be like, clever.
She says, you're not going anywhere without me. And they kiss. And the volcano starts to get angry. They hope for a miracle. Joe says he loves her again. They hold hands. She says she loves him. And they jump together. They hit a burst of steam that catapults them right back out of the volcano, through the sky, and into the ocean.
That's so fucking ridiculous. I mean, like I said, it's like a goddamn cartoon. Volcano's not going to do that. It's not going to propel you out of the fucking volcano. On top of the fact you're going to shoot all the way out into the ocean and survive.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it goes perfectly with the weird left turns this movie keeps taking.
It really does. It's like at this point, you don't know what to expect, but you know it's going to be batshit crazy.
So the islanders all start screaming and scattering, but then we see the volcano starts to erupt. The island starts to sink as Joe and Patricia watch from the water. Miraculously, one might say, all of Joe's 4 trunks pop up around them, and they are able to strap them together like a raft and float away safely. Patricia says that this is a romantic honeymoon for them. Isn't this romantic? Sure, till you starve to death or die of dehydration.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you survived, but for what?
So Joe says they're forgetting he has a brain cloud. We may have survived the jump, but I'm still going to die. He says, maybe I should get a second opinion. You think? And she says that too.
And I love, before that even happened, before that part even comes up, she's the first person in this movie to question the brain cloud. Like, she's like, a brain cloud? What the fuck is a brain cloud?
Yeah. So they discuss how stupid that is and figure out that Joe was indeed set up by Dr. Ellison, that he had a conversation with Mr. Graynamore, and they came up with a plot, her father, to get Joe to do this. Patricia says, Joe, you've got your whole life ahead of you now. That's great news, but we're still stuck on this raft. And again, I was thinking, yeah, Yar, what are you going to do? Did you drink all the Perrier that was stashed in the trunk? Like, you're fucked.
Maybe there's some cans of orange soda that will float up.
But yeah, he's pointing out how desperate their situation is now. And she just looks at him and goes, it's always going to be something with you, isn't it? And I'm like, a life of a hypochondriac. Yeah.
Yep.
It's always going to be something. So Joe says, well, I will tell you one thing. From now on, wherever we go, we're taking this luggage. I love it. They kiss, and she asks, I wonder where we're going to end up. As we pan out, we see the big moon in the night sky, and Joe says, away from the things of man. Music plays, and we get words on the screen now that say, and they lived happily ever after, the end. Roll credits over a background of the night sky, and that is Joe versus the volcano.
That movie was, like I said, it was just completely batshit crazy. The overall thought I have on it is, like I said, the first time watching it, it started off not liking it, started to grow on me, started to appreciate it, and then by the end of the movie, I was like, okay, I don't hate it. I'm not in love with it yet, but I got a feeling this is something that's going to grow on me. During this conversation, it has already started to grow on me. So
I'm excited to hear of your rewatch experience now. And I'll bring it up at a later date, in the future, and just ask you randomly, because after discussing it now and really analyzing it, I feel like a rewatch is going to be more fun for you. Yeah. I think.
Yeah. And it's one of those movies that, like I said, it has grown on me. The rewatch will be a lot of fun. And it kind of makes me think, I've always meant to do this, but I never have. Before I watch a movie, go through the trivia and all that shit before I watch it, just so I can kind of like pick out like, oh, I didn't know this happened or that happened or, whatever. I've never done that before. And This is almost like doing that now. Of like, now I get to go back and see it again, knowing what's coming, and I get to look for things. So
right,
that will be fun.
All right. Well, let's jump to 3 questions and wrap this up.
All right.
Question 1. We discussed at the top of this recording how Tom Hanks had his big comedy run in the 80s. And I will run down the list again really quick. Splash, Bachelor Party, The Man with One Red Shoe, Volunteers, The Money Pit, Big, Dragnet, The Burbs, Turner and Hooch, and Joe versus the Volcano. Now, there were a few things here and there, obviously, in between all that, but those were the comedies that he did in the 80s. Out of all of that, since you're a Tom Hanks fan, I wanted to know, where are you going to kind of put this? Like, what are your top 3 or 4 favorites out of the bunch of his comedies? Excuse me, out of the bunch of his comedies from that era? And does this fall into the rankings somewhere, or is this still at the bottom of the list because you just saw it for the first time?
This is at the bottom of the list because I've just seen it and it has to grow on me. I do have to say, I have to bring up again that I'm a newcomer to Tom Hanks. I've seen like the older stuff, or I mean the newer stuff, but I haven't become a huge fan until more recently. So actually, some of those movies you named, I have not seen.
Oh, no kidding. Okay, so let's run through these real quick. Have you seen Splash?
No.
Bachelor Party?
No.
The Man with One Red Shoe?
No.
Volunteers?
No.
The Money Pit?
No.
Big?
Yes.
Okay, and how do you feel about that one?
I think that was the one that kind of introduced me to Tom Hanks.
Okay. How about Dragnet?
I've seen it one time with my mom a long time ago. She didn't like it because she was a fan of the original Dragnet, so she wanted she didn't want it to be a comedy.
Gotcha.
This is one I have to go back and watch again because I feel like I will appreciate it more now that I'm older.
Okay, and The Burbs?
Yes, love it. Fucking amazing.
Turner and Hooch?
Yes.
And then this one, Joe versus the Volcano. Now you can say
it's growing on me.
Okay, so you've got some homework there. You've got to start looking through the back catalog of 80s Tom Hanks comedies and get a few under the belt here.
I do, especially the comedies. Like some of the early dramatic ones I don't care about. Like his movies with Meg Ryan, I'm not 100% sure I want to see them.
So I will say, when I look at Meg Ryan romantic comedies, When Harry Met Sally is my favorite. But Sleepless in Seattle with Tom Hanks and You've Got Mail are definitely cute. Sleepless in Seattle's better of the two because of the ensemble cast, and the writing is chef's kiss. As far as 80s comedies, Splash is not my favorite, but I do enjoy it from time to time. I don't find it hilarious, but it's got like young, maybe John Candy, but it's got Eugene Levy. It's got like a bunch of the guys that they were all like pals with kicking around the comedy scene. Daryl Hannah as a mermaid, delightful. Not one I rewatch a lot. I love The Man with One Red Shoe because it is very obscure. I like those kind of movies where people are like, what movie is that? And I'm like, oh, let me tell you.
I've honestly never even heard of that movie.
Very obscure. The Burbs, of course, is my favorite Tom Hanks comedy. I love it. I have the whole thing memorized. As you know, I covered it on the pod with Nikki Flicks. We interviewed Corey Danziger, who plays Tom Hanks' son in the movie, for the show. That was fun. Burbs is my favorite. This one, high on my list now after rewatching it for the umpteenth time now for this with you, because I've really delved into the themes, the dialogue, everything about it makes me appreciate it that much more now. So yeah,
okay.
That's where I'm at on the Tom Hanks comedies. The other ones are all a little mainstream meh for me.
I can see where they're mainstream meh. Some of them, like Turner Hooch, is just it's one of those ones that it's fond memories because again, it's like I watched it with my mom, so she loved it.
Yeah.
Thought it was a cute movie. Big, I grew up on it, so I always enjoyed it for what it was. Burbs is probably kind of like hopped up there as like one I absolutely fucking enjoy because it's amazingly funny, dark humor. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying check out The Man with One Red Shoe because it's a weird movie.
All right, that's what I'm going to be looking for. That's probably at the top of the list of the ones I want to go back and check out. I gotta admit, Splash has always been on the bottom. I've never ever been interested in Splash.
I wouldn't rush to watch it if that's the case, because you're not really missing much, honestly. All right, question 2. You're Joe. What do? You've got a few months to live with your brain cloud, which we'll pretend is a real thing. You've got Graina Moore's credit cards to play with for, let's say, 2 weeks until you have to jump into the volcano. What do you do?
First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit up the fanciest restaurants I could go to. Like I'm going to live it up food wise.
So like Dave and Buster's?
Yeah. Dave and Buster's. I'm going to splurge and get me the Big Mac meal.
No, really. What is fancy to drive-in Dave? Tell me.
There's stuff that I would be very interested in trying that I've never had the opportunity to try, like Kobe beef. So, being able to try that. I would love to go to Japan and their sushi, like real fresh fucking sushi restaurant.
And zip line into Godzilla's mouth.
Zip line into Godzilla's mouth. In fact, okay, zip line into Godzilla's mouth. I want to eat at the restaurant, stay at the hotel, the Godzilla Hotel. The sushi restaurant I want to go to is the one owned by, I do not know his actual name. They call him Octopus Man from Ninja Warrior, Sasuke over there.
Okay.
If anyone who knows Sasuke, fucking amazing thing. But the guy, he's on there. He's actual sushi chef. I want to go to his restaurant. I think that would be amazing.
So out of your 2 weeks you got left, you're taking a week to go to Japan?
Go to Japan. I want to go to Ireland.
So you would travel?
I would probably travel, like hit food places, do some traveling, see some stuff I didn't get to see. That's probably like the big thing I would do. Oh yeah, especially Ireland, because I want to go to Ireland because they have the buskers there. I don't know if you're familiar with what busking is. It's street performers.
Right.
And they've got some amazing street performers. They're top of my list of people I want to see before I die. The first one that pops in my mind is Ali Sherlock. Amazing singer. Love her to death. I would love to go see her perform on the street.
We got buskers in the US and the subways of New York and the streets of LA, all over the place.
We do. I see. We don't have them here though. Where I'm at, we don't get them. I see the ones. I watch the ones on YouTube from over there, and it just seems like it's just an awesome time. So that's the kind of shit I would do if I got like unlimited money 2 weeks before I have to go and jump into a fucking volcano.
I like it. It's all good stuff. For me, since I have a significant other that I would be leaving behind, I would take Mr. Graynimore's credit cards and I would take him and we would go to Vegas because he's always dying to go back there. And we would live it up, gamble, since money would be no object, stay at the nice places, eat at the nice restaurants. I want to eat a fucking beef Wellington at Gordon Ramsay's restaurant. That's on my bucket list, for real. All kinds of stuff like that in Vegas. Live it up for a few days out of that 2 weeks. We're going to LA. We're going to the beach. We're going to try I'm going to get him surfing and doing all kinds of shit he never thought he would do. We're going to eat at nice restaurants. We're going to go shopping on Rodeo Drive, as the guy says in UHF, Beverly Hills. I'm going to buy shit for him to leave him with. Like he loves comics. So I'm like buying some expensive fucking comics that he would never buy for himself. Donating to dog rescues, taking money off the credit cards and giving money to things that I think need money that I wish I could stick around and do. And just do a little bit of traveling and eating like all the stuff I've always wanted to do. And 2 weeks and then boom, yeah, bye. I'm going into the volcano. Hoping it spits me out with some steam.
And hopefully you land in the ocean and not on like a rock. Of all the places to land, it's the ocean. Like, that's a big, not a huge island, but still, it's like the chances of hitting the water and not a fucking sharp rock. That's luck.
And then also hope that no sharks or anything eat you before you can get your raft put together.
Well, I mean, come on. Let's look at the sharks that are in that ocean. They look like, like old puppets and stuff. So, I mean, they're not going to do much damage.
The hammerhead. Yeah. All right. Question 3. We are going to play Marry, Fuck, Kill. So for you get
Tom Hanks. I'm going to marry Tom Hanks.
You get he's not an option for you.
Oh, come on.
You get the 3 versions of Meg Ryan. You get brunette, mild-mannered Dee Dee. You get redhead, chain-smoking, eccentric Angelica. And you get blonde, bossy sailor chick, Patricia. Marry, fuck, kill. Go.
I like Angelica the most, but I don't feel like she would be a reliable person to marry. So that's the fuck. So then I'm going to marry, what was the third one's name?
There's Patricia, the blonde
Patricia,
sailor,
thank you.
and Dee Dee.
Patricia. See, that's how memorable Patricia is. It's like she's just there.
Oh wait, okay, so you're fucking Angelica.
Yeah, and then I'm going to marry Patricia.
Oh, so you're killing Dee Dee, the poor little mild-mannered brunette.
She just didn't do enough.
Do it for me. You're gone.
Well, it's just like it's. I mean, I don't want to kill any of them, but it's like out of the 3, she was just kind of there. At least with Patricia, I kind of feel like, okay, well, she's probably going to be encouraging, push you to achieve the peak of your existence. Like you're going to. Angelica is just, probably just a quick lay, and then Dee Dee's like, I feel like Dee Dee would get lost going to the grocery store.
Oh my God.
So
okay, it's a wild assumption to make, but okay.
Yeah, like I feel like I don't even have to kill Dee Dee. I could just give Dee Dee like $50, go to the grocery store, and she's probably never going to make it back.
All right, so I'm gonna let you choose for me. Give me my marry, fuck, kill options. Obviously, Joe has to be one, but who else?
Joe. Oh, I'm gonna love this one. Joe's boss and the chief of the island.
Oh my god. Okay, so I'm fucking the boss because I don't know, because he seems like he's a blowhard and comes off aggressive, but yet when Joe pins him into the wall, it turns into a pussy. So I feel like I'd be able to like push him around and that'd be fun for one time. Okay, so we'll fuck the boss. I'm gonna kill the chief of the Waponies because he dies anyway. The island sinks. So and I'll marry Joe because even though he starts out mild mannered and sickly, he does turn into somebody who's really cool at the end. So I would marry Joe.
I want to hear the audio tape of you and the boss. I could just hear it right now. Yeah, I know you can suck it, but are you going to suck it? Yeah, I know you can suck it, but are you going to suck it?
I'm not arguing that with you. I know we can do it like that. I'm not saying we have to do it like that, but I know we can do it like that. I'm not arguing this with you. Oh my god, that would be the foreplay. We would talk so much about what we're gonna do that we would actually do it. Oh my fucking god.
Like 40 minutes of him talking and then 30 seconds of actual sex.
Oh my god, that's amazing. I'm just picturing the scenario. Him just sitting there. I know we can do it like that. I'm not saying we'll do it. I'm not arguing that with you.
Oh.
Oh my god.
Oh, that'd be brilliant.
All right, that is going to wrap up our discussion on the 1990 film Joe versus the Volcano. If anyone out there is interested in checking it out, it is currently, at the time of this recording, available on pay streaming on Amazon Prime and YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today with this. I'm so happy that this is one that's going to kind of grow on you.
It is. It really is. And I think one of the things that's going to help is our current sponsor for the day. I want to thank them, and I'm going to enjoy them the next time I watch that movie. Jump Orange Soda. It's not just good to drink. It's also amazing to wear. If you need a jockstrap or some titty support, remember Jump Orange Soda.
Unfortunately, it can't protect you from sinking into the ocean. Hey, maybe if you string enough of the cans together, you can use them as a flotation device.
See, there you go. It's the miracle soda. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
It really is. And delicious if it tastes like Fanta. Well, we want to thank you all for listening. And until next time, goodbye.
You're not telling me nothing.
I'm telling you.
Why? I ask myself, why have I put up with you? I can't imagine. But I know. It's fear, yellow freaking fear. I've been too chicken shit afraid to live my life, so I sold it to you for $300 freaking dollars. Oh, wait! You are lucky I don't kill you! You're lucky I don't rip your freaking throat out! But I'm not going to! And maybe you're not so lucky at that. Because I'm gonna leave you here, Mr. Wahaturi. What could be worse than that?
Welcome, everybody. Blah. Welcome. Start this over. Welcome, everybody.
Would you like me to kick it off?
Now I fucked myself up. Yeah, you do it.
You want me? You want me to start it off? Okay.
Hey, listeners, Movie Miss here, saying we know you have a lot of options when it comes to podcasts, so we want to thank you so much for listening to ours. Please make sure to find us on our socials and join us. Be part of our bad movie conversations. We want to chat with you. We're on Facebook with an official page, as well as a Let's Talk Turkeys discussion group, where you can talk with other like-minded individuals who like bad movies. We're on Instagram at Let's Talk Turkeys. Our Twitter handle is at Gobble Podcast. That's GOBBLEPODCAST. And of course, you can always email us direct. We would love to get suggestions from you of movies you would like us to cover. If you want to be a guest on the show, we would love that. So directly, that's Let's Talk Turkeys, all one word, at yahoo.com.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.